So this is the flute, a Pakistani flute, an Irish flute. Comes in this quite nice box. Just turn that around for you to look at. Just take it out. It's 4 parts. So if you just fit it together first. So this is. So if the first. So it's about 50 or 60 centimeters long and has these nice gold ferrules, which we call it sort of standard ferrules for Pakistani flutes, and it has this nice polished varnish finish, which is the first thing that sort of strikes one. Just trying to get the focus right. Just put it down there. Huh? It smells sort of chemicals, and the first thing I'm going to do is just remove that varnish because I don't trust it. Now, it's a bit difficult with the camera on a tripod, but if you actually look down the whole length of the instrument, well, you can't actually see it here, but just take my word that it's actually it's not actually straight, which tends to suggest that whoever made it didn't have a very good lathe or wasn't working very accurately. First thing, so let's go through some of the problems with this flute. The first thing that I noticed is that this cork bung down here was not positioned properly. It should be somewhere around here, but it was here, which meant it was impossible to actually get a sound from this instrument. So I repositioned that, and as a rule of thumb, you measure the diameter of the tube and you double it, and the cork should be, so if we got 16, this is a 19, diameter is 19, so the internal diameter, so you double that, so you get to 38, 3.8 centimeters from the center of the embouchure. That's where the cork should be located. If you look at the rings, they're not very well mounted. There is a sort of 0.5 millimeter of sort of space between the ring and the wood. And if we can compare that to an older flute, which is about 100 years old, if you look at this one, you might see the difference. This one's really well, it has a really nice tight fit. This is a German flute from about 100 years old, and this is the Pakistani flute. And they're more or less all like that, you know. So these ferrules have been fitted badly. It's not just it shouldn't just be a question of getting them on there and glued. They should actually do their job, which is to stop the wood from cracking over time, particularly here. Because if you look at the wood's very thin at this point, a couple of millimeters, and this is the sort of typical. This is the place where they normally crack, for different reasons. But obviously, if the rings are well fitted, they will tend not to crack. as quickly. So if we move on now from the what I noticed on the embouchure is that it was basically okay for somebody for a right-hander, but not for a left-hander. So if we can see the difference here, I can't really see any difference, but yeah, that just something that I noticed. And if you look at the older flutes, this is the one that I showed you just now, from 1900 or so. Just get that into focus. Come on. Okay, it doesn't want to. But a flute should be made for left or right hand players, and this one isn't. The next thing that you should do is check for cracks, particularly around here, because if you're going to get a crack in the head joint, it might start here and work its way up. So this is where you're going to probably see a sort of developing crack, a small crack that might get worse. The next problem is this brass tubing, which, if you look at the older flutes, going back to the flute from about 1900, this is seamless. This isn't seamless tubing. It's actually been made to measure, and we can't actually look in there, but it's absolutely beautiful and polished, and you can't see the seam either on the outside or the inside. And back to the Pakistani flute, it's horrible. They've managed to this is tubing that's been soldered or brazen, and you can't really see the join on the outside, but you can if you look at it on the inside, and there are all sorts of, there's pitting, you can probably just see that, there's some pitting, which is a problem because it's going to trap humidity, which is going to affect the sound of the flute. So this pitting is really bad news. So that's another thing you should check, but I think that might be sort of fairly common to have that pitting in there. They just don't. This should be polished on the inside, and in fact that pitting comes from it being soldered in a very sort of dilettantic way. It's badly worked. Yeah, that's the. Let's come down to the. Let's go down to the barrel now. The barrels. What if I can just compare? If you look at this, the one on this side, it's not actually just the brass tubing inside isn't just has a sort of is folded over to fit in to the barrel, and they haven't bothered to do that here with the Pakistani flute, which I don't know if that's a real problem. But what you see here is, I mean, look, this was supposed to be African blackwood, and if you look in here, you can probably through here you can see sort of remains of black dye or stain. So it's obviously a lighter wood that's been dyed. Sort of they tried to dye it black, which hasn't really. It's not very dark. So I think it's probably sort of rosewood or something. The tubing is better. That's nice and polished, on the inside, but it might be seamless tubing. So they might have used seamless tubing here. So let's carry on now. Let's go on to the. This is the next segment. This is very badly done. It's a sort of nylon, very thin nylon, sort of what's it called? Nylon thread, and I don't like that at all. It should be thicker, and it should, it shouldn't be. It should be cotton, I suppose, or even better, cork would be better. But if you look down there, down the bore, it's really, really nasty. I'll just compare it here to the on this side. This is the flute from around 1900, and it's just like looking down the barrel of a gun. It's beautiful. It's polished. It's just compare it to this. This is like looking into a cave. I mean, it's an approximation of a flute, but it's obviously. It's not. They haven't had the right tools. So I suspect what you have here is a constriction around about here. First note, which is there, and it's this is what you don't have a sort of continuous conical bore. It's just sort of, it looks as if they've been sticking things in both ends to get an approximation of a conical bore, and I don't think they had the right reamers, and I don't think they had, the step drilling wasn't very accurate, which caused some of these problems, and I don't think they had the right, as I said, they had the right reamers. I think they might have just used files. So this really is not on, you can't sell this kind of product as a flute. So this is the last segment, and the first thing that you notice here is that, just wait for that to focus. Let's go a bit nearer. Doesn't want to. Okay. This hole isn't actually in the center of the bore. It's been bored. After this hole was bored, they realized that they'd actually taken out part of the side of the walling, and they just basically tidied things up. And if you see that kind of thing, you don't even have to have a look down the bore to realize that something's wrong. Now, if you do look down this bore, if we can, it's not very well centered. And the second thing is it's not even straight. It's sort of a banana shape, which suggests that they've used the wrong drill bit. It's probably a spiral drill bit. And so it's all right until about here. It's quite straight, and then it goes off. It veers off to the right. So what they did was, in order to try and correct that, they bored from this end, and probably recentered it, bored from this end, but weren't able to actually remove the overcutting. So what you have here is a sort of, around here, it's fairly sort of, if I can see, perhaps we can see it better in here. There's a shadow. If you point this up into the light, I don't have a light source at the bottom at the moment, so I can't do that. But if you point towards the light, There's a shadow cast on the side of the bore around here. It's about, I suppose it's about a third of a centimetre wide, which is just totally unprofessional. And I suppose the only thing you could do is to sort of cut this off around here, just shorten it, just get rid of the problem that way, and it still might be in tune. So yeah, that's bad news. So those are the main points that I wanted to mention, the things that I wanted to look at. I mean, this flute is basically just junk. You can't really even give it to a child as a toy because of the varnish that they've used. So if anybody's thinking of buying one of these, there's the barrel. If anyone's thinking of buying one of these, I mean, I don't want to. I'm not saying that all Pakistani flutes are bad, but this one certainly is. And so I hope that you know now, the kind of thing you might be getting. Oh yeah, and if we just come to the actual intonation, normally when you play it, I'm not going to play it because it's just, it's not a very nice sound. But just want to say something about the. Normally, if you just pull the head joint out about a centimetre or so, it should actually be in tune. Hang on, the focus is going a bit haywire. Should be in tune, but this one's only in tune with the head joint pushed all the way in. That's the sort of quirk of this one. It's not how it should be. Hang on. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Sorry about the autofocus playing up occasionally.